Metal Sonic. We all know him, we all love him, or, well, some of you might actually hate him, but that depends on who you ask. Metal Sonic has always been one of my favorite reoccurring characters in the Sonic series, mostly known as Dr. Robotnik's greatest creation and Sonic's only rival until the introduction of the Ultimate Lifeform within Shadow. Metal Sonic has had more than his fair share of appearances in Sonic games. So with having a bunch of different variations of the character with all the various titles he's been in, today we'll be looking at the several changes that the Blue Blur's metallic doppelganger has seen throughout the years. And with that being said, let's take a look at the various obscure faces of Metal Sonic. So if you didn't know already, Metal Sonic actually made his first appearance back in 1993 with Sonic CD. Along with the game's popularity, most fans have the iconic design for Metal Sonic come into their head immediately just from hearing his name. Some small things to add to the creation of Metal was that Sonic CD's director Naoto Oshima wanted to introduce a new rival for Sonic in Sonic CD. One of the main keywords in his mind for this new rival was menacing, and his design flowed from a concept. Things had to be nowhere near perfect, but it just needed to have meaning with the design itself. Metal Sonic's glowing red eyes were one of the things decided upon by the team that would give him a deadly intimidating look. His jet engine in his chest would give him speed to match, exceed, and rival Sonic. The glossy reflective finish with the CGI trends made Metal Sonic feel like a true nemesis and a rival to Sonic that would be advertised on the box artwork along with Sonic at the time of the release for Sonic CD. Now with some background info out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about Mka.II, the first Metal Sonic ever introduced back in Sonic 2. Although Sonic CD would introduce a first look at the iconic design of Metal Sonic, Sonic 2 is where we would see our first ever version of a Metal Sonic. In Sonic 2, during the final level, Death Egg Zone, before confronting Dr. Robotnik, he puts you up against this evil robot which sparks a lot of resemblance to the Blue Blur. The head structure contained pointy ears, sharp saw blade quills, and a round orange eye. The robot also featured metallic armor with 2 arms and orange rocket boosters with tires. This design obviously seemed like Dr. Robotnik's first attempt at making a robotic Sonic copy. And although the boss can be easy as fuck, this design for Mecha Sonic had a few other small appearances like in LEGO Dimensions and in Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. And although only having a few small appearances, I actually really like this design for Metal, and it truly feels like the early stages of what we would know to be the true Metal Sonic. And for what it is, it does a pretty great job. Now, what might surprise some of you is that on Sonic 2's handheld 8-bit port, another robotic Sonic was actually showcased. In Sonic 2 8-bit, at the end of Scrambled Egg Zone Act 3, you will face Mecha Sonic, who is another robotic doppelganger of Sonic that, in this specific case, possesses a rather low-tech looking appearance. This design had a metallic gray armor with a yellow color scheme on its center body and mouth plate. This design also featured an attached light blue visor with a red lens, and a light blue sneakers with rocket motors. Mecha Sonic's primary weapons included a large claw protruding from its torso and blue rocket engines on both sides of its body where its arms would be. This design would also make other small appearances like within Sonic Mania and that Metal Sonic boss fight. As for this design, I'm not really a big fan. The mix of the prominent colors of blue, yellow, and silver just really aren't my cup of tea. For sure, don't get me wrong, it's an interesting design, but not one I'd want revisited. Following both versions of Sonic 2, we would finally be introduced to the main design that we are all familiar with in Sonic CD. Metal Sonic in this game is what I would actually consider to be one of the main antagonists of Sonic CD. He's not just a boss in Stardust Speedway, but throughout other zones can be a pain for the Blue Blur, even stealing his biggest admirer, Amy Rose. Metal Sonic was created in the image of Sonic, and thus is mostly built of a blue metal by Dr. Robotnik. He has a yellow circular depression in his chest with a black center, mirroring the peach skin on Sonic's chest. His head has metal fins resembling Sonic's quills and a pair of triangular ears. Metal Sonic has a muzzle, shoulder plates, upper arms, legs, and fingers made out of silvery metal, while the backs of his hands are square yellow plates. He also has red feet with white stripes designed to resemble Sonic's shoes. To stimulate the Hedgehog's eyes, he has monitors with cameras behind them giving them a red appearance. In some future titles, Metal Sonic would also receive some slight upgrades like making him taller or just making him match whatever design Sonic had at the time. Whether that was being in the adventure titles or just his modern appearance, he also gained more detailed hands, a brilliant blue paint job, joints on his arms and legs, and sharper eye holes. Although I am no expert when it comes to character design, this look for Metal is perfect, and I'm really glad it's the choice for what became the main look of Metal Sonic. This is of course the most iconic design of the mechanically engineered rival of Sonic, and as such had the most appearances out of every design, in not just other media, but in mainline titles like Sonic Generations, Sonic Mania, and even great classics like Sonic 4 Episode 2. Wait, who added that one? Due to Metal Sonic's massive popularity, this would actually end up making him a reoccurring character for the series. Mecha Sonic Mark II would actually be the next version of Metal Sonic on our list, first being showcased in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. To be a bit more specific though, this version of Mecha Sonic would be the antagonist of the Knuckles story throughout Sonic 3 and Knuckles. You'll first encounter Mecha during Sky Sanctuary, and similar to the more well-known design, he is again mostly built out of a blue material, with light blue colored metal on his belly and muzzle. His head once again has metal fins designed like Sonic's quills, and a pair of triangular ears just like the original model. Much like every design, Mecha Sonic in this game also has feet that are red with a white stripe in the middle, aiming again to be similar to Sonic's shoes. And lastly, as eyes, he possesses a horizontal optic sensor. Along with this, during his boss fight, he would also take on a more golden tone appearance after absorbing some of the Master Emerald's power. I would actually consider this to be one of the more popular versions of Metal, but also one of my personal favorite designs. It's made quite a few returns in not only the main series, but also in fan-made works. Works such as Super Mario Bros. Z also make him a lot more badass. As for the main series, he appears in stuff like the official Minecraft Sonic texture pack, and even in the IDW comics where he takes on a new form known as Scrapnik Mecha. Now moving forward, our next title doesn't introduce a new version of Metal Sonic, but rather a new form he takes hold of. In the very well-known spin-off, this new form of Metal would take place in Knuckles Chaotix, a game with a lot of mixed signals when it comes to how I feel about the game. Regardless, this is a new form that comes into play when Metal Sonic is exposed to a large dark ring. This new form is known as Metal.II, and it appears in Tragic High Zone, where he attempts to destroy Knuckles and his teammates. As for the design itself, Metal.II has a similar appearance to his base form as Metal Sonic, although he is much bigger, more monstrous looking, and red in color. The quills, ears, and spines on his back are also very long and sharp. Metal.II also has separated eyes that are similar to a visor with a long sharp nose located between them. Additionally, he has a large mouth with sharp metal teeth inside. His arms and legs are also very much separated from his body. Honestly, I love this design for Metal because it comes off very intimidating and all Godzilla-like. This can even be presented when receiving the bad ending of Knuckles Chaotix by not collecting all the Chaos Rings. You'll see the city in flames and Metal.II hovering ominous-like all over it. As for this design, since it was introduced in a spin-off title, it didn't really seem like you'll get a return really, although there is one exception, but we'll touch upon that later. Next up is Rocket Metal, taking place in Sonic the Fighters. Although having a main appearance with his regular design in game, Metal Sonic has this alternate design which, funnily enough, only shows up in the title screen with several noticeable differences. His head is shaped like a rocket with long fin-like spines. The two smaller spines are attached to his head like wings on a rocket, being colored yellow near the attachment areas and red on the tips. This new version also is complete with silver text on the left and right sides reading Mecha Sonic model number 29. Another cool detail is that the name Rocket Metal comes from the fact that he literally turns into a rocket. I was always a fan of Transformers, so this is definitely one of my favorite designs I've talked about so far. Now, past the title screen cameo, unfortunately Rocket Metal isn't an actual boss nor a playable character, but still one of the coolest designs that honestly could have had a really fun boss gimmick. Still an amazing design though. Mecha Sonic Mk.III will be the next design we talk about, first being showcased in Sonic Adventure 1. This variation bears a very strong resemblance to the Mecha Sonic featured in Sonic 2 on the Genesis. Notably, this version is taller than Sonic and has wheels on their heels. This version of Mecha Sonic also isn't a boss or anything like that, it's just a small cameo you'll see while heading for the final egg stage. Mecha Sonic Mk.III also has a super cool design, and one I'm a large fan of. It's just not a lot to say for this guy. Next up, here's Neo Metal Sonic, another transformation first showcased in Sonic Heroes. It shares some distinctive traits with his base form, such as the black eyes with the red irises, a similar torso with a rocket engine in the center, and the primary blue color with the red shoes. There are a number of differences that Neo Metal Sonic features as well. His head has 5 long quills as opposed to his regular 3. It also sports white stripes and markings around his eyes similar to that of Shadow. The yellow color in his ears has also been replaced with red, and his once gray nose is now entirely black. He also possesses more body armor with blackened curved shoulder plates, larger gauntlets, and leg armor with pointy kneecaps that have white outlines. He also sports a spiky belt with a black cape that protrudes out of the back of his waist. Now overall, this is one badass design for Metal Sonic. Sonic Heroes in general is a whole can of worms I'm not ready to open up yet, but without a doubt this is one of the best transformations for Metal Sonic, and if I'm being honest, one of the most memorable changes I've seen with Metal Sonic in the history of the series. Now, unsurprisingly, there's actually another transformation in Sonic Heroes with the Metal Overlord. The physical appearance resembles a large blue, heavily armed mechanical dragon with 2 eyes lined up vertically on his head. He has several long spikes on his upper body and many smaller ones running down his back, and has a long curved tail. He has a flamethrower at his right hand, and his left hand has 4 fingers with claws that can be launched. The only physical difference between Metal Overlord and Metal Madness is that he has grown a pair of mechanical wings on his lower body that detaches himself from the fleet, leaving several cables hanging from the bottom of his body. First off, this design features a boss fight with one of the best vocal tracks of any Sonic game, What I'm Made Of. But going back to the design itself, the whole concept of this huge creature Super Sonic must fight is one of the coolest things ever, and I'm glad that around this point in the series would become something we see more commonly with games like 06, Unleashed, and now with Frontiers. Following Neo Metal and Metal Overlord, we have Metal Sonic 3.0. He's a character that appears for the first time in Sonic Rivals 2. It's Eggman Nega's improved version of Metal Sonic, which acts as a rival to the predecessor. Although it uses the same body model as Metal Sonic, the only thing different about the two are the colors. Metal Sonic 3.0 is colored black, where Metal Sonic is colored blue, and it has black feet with a yellow stripe as opposed to Metal Sonic's red with a white stripe. 3.0 also has a yellow outline around its eyes and 3 parallel vertical yellow stripes starting from its muzzle to the top of the 3.0's spine. Interestingly, the outside of 3.0's ears are also colored a silver gray as opposed to black. This look for Metal is honestly nothing short of a redesign. I mean, there's nothing really memorable about it, but hey, the color choices of black and gold are actually pretty cool. Our next game on the list is Sonic Free Riders, and although being a shittier sequel to the amazing original Riders, Metal Sonic does have a new form in this game. What is it, you might ask? Well, it's actually kind of funny, and you'll see why. The Robo-2s, or the E10000 series robot, are created by Dr. Eggman, so for whatever reason, Metal Sonic decided to conceal himself and actually hide as one of these things for the entirety of the game. He also replaces Omega as Team Dark's power character. Near the end of the game, though, is where he's revealed to be Metal Sonic in disguise. Now, the actual design itself gets a 0 out of 10 because, well, it looks nothing like Metal Sonic, but trust me, my jaw dropped to the floor when I first found out about it. Now for the next character on our list, I actually got a very special guest and an expert on all things Metal Sonic to cover what's next.
Hello there, I'm Nick, and I love robot clones of Sonic. I've covered a whole bunch of them on my channel, and I'm still not done, but the best of the bunch is, without a doubt and with no surprise, Metal Sonic. Out of all the other robots, they just knocked this one out of the park so early on. It's clean, it's iconic, you really don't need to mess with it. So it's weird that they keep messing with it, because this little robot transforms into a giant ugly kaiju more often than you'd imagine. And it never works. I don't know why Eggman keeps going kaiju with this robot. Oh well, whatever, it's always fun to see. And the last time we got a mega-sized metal was in Sonic Mania. Oh, sorry, Sonic Mania Plus. In the original game, you would race through Stardust Speedway and then come across this angry little bot and face off against him in a 3-phase fight that sees you battling him straight up and then against him again, except now attached to a giant machine spewing out a bunch of mini Mecha Sonics. And finally, one more time, but now being chased by a spiked wall. This game did a great job celebrating the early days of the franchise, and the metal fight did a solid job repping the history of the robot. But a lot of fans, myself included, felt that final leg of the fight was a little lackluster. So Sega went back and completely changed that final fight, which is something they're starting to make a habit of. Hey there, Sonic Frontiers! When they rolled around the Plus updates, they swapped out the spike wall with a Metal Sonic powered up by the Phantom Ruby. Infused with the power of this reality warping jewel, the little robot transforms into Giga Metal, a clear callback to Metal Sonic Kai from Knuckles' Chaotix. And this just felt right. After that second phase showing off the 2 busted bodies of Metal from previous battles, and even referencing Chaotix again by having him attached to a giant machine, and giving Sonic 2 Game Gear some love with those little mini mechas, they were really going all out with the references. So I personally thought they would escalate things even further and give us something similar to Kai the first time I played through Sonic Mania, and I was a little let down. I still love the fight just fine, but it just felt like such an obvious choice. So you better believe I was all kinds of hyped to see Giga pop out on the screen when I updated my game with the Plus expansion. For the most part, Giga Metal's design is the same as Kai's. Same proportions, same eyes, same silver decals on the side of his head, giant shoulder blades with tubes coming out of them for some reason. It's all mostly the same, but there are some obvious differences, like the coloration. Giga Metal keeps his iconic blue instead of just randomly turning red, and instead of an open intake on his chest, it's now covered by a glass dome containing the Phantom Ruby. And instead of fangs, he now has a cannon coming out of his neck. They were so close to making this thing cool, and then they did that. But he needs that cannon for pretty much all of his attacks. Outside of needing to dodge his flailing arms, you also need to maneuver around bouncing bombs and a laser attack. You run into the obvious weak point that is the ruby until Giga glows pink and explodes, and you're done. You've won. It's not that complex of a battle on its own, but considering this is the final part of a 3-stage battle midway through the game, I can't complain. That is pretty awesome. And as a complete package, this is easily one of the best Metal Sonic fights in the history of the franchise. But yeah, most of what makes Giga cool is simply nostalgia. It's a callback to a very obscure form from a very obscure spin-off Sonic game, and all of its coolest design elements were ripped straight off of Kai. And I still think the original Kai looks better than this, but I can't be upset with Giga. Outside of that weird neck cannon, this still looks awesome. And even removing the other phases of the fight, Giga Metal is easily the best battle of any of the Metal Kaiju fights. And seriously, it's so weird how often he transforms. I don't really have any genuine complaints about the design or the fight. I was just so happy to see this in Mania Plus. It's exactly what I wanted from a rematch with Metal, and I won't be forgetting it anytime soon. And I also can't wait to see what twisted abomination Metal Sonic turns into next.
For the last version of Metal Sonic, we have Chaos Sonic from Sonic Prime. Now, I can already hear the comments typing away.
VMeg, why are you covering Chaos Sonic? He's from a show, not a game!
And well, little Timmy, because he's cool and it would feel like a crime not to mention him. Now fuck off. Chaos Sonic is the secondary antagonist of the Sonic Prime episode Double Trouble. He is a robotic replica of Sonic built by the Chaos Council to destroy him. Now, unlike most Metal Sonics, this one actually speaks and can be pretty funny at times when he's copying the real Sonic.
Wow, looking at you is like looking in a mirror. Only I'm all sad and pathetic.
Due to being made like Sonic, Chaos Sonic possesses a lot of Sonic's personality traits. However, Chaos Sonic seems to only possess Sonic's more negative traits, and as such comes off as arrogant, cocky, and competitive. Because of this, he's very annoying, even to Sonic. As for the actual design, Chaos Sonic is a dark blue, spindly robot with long appendages, yellow accents on his body, and red shoe-like feet. Having been modeled after Sonic, he possesses quills and ears on his head, and the rest of which is primarily composed of a glowing cyan screen that displays his red eyes. Now, taking this list all together, this has to be one of my favorite versions of Metal Sonic, if not my favorite variation of Sonic's metallic doppelganger. The uniqueness is honestly what gives it so much charm, and in the show itself, the race between Chaos Sonic and the actual Sonic has to be one of my favorite moments from Sonic Prime. And with that, we have now reached the end of our list, ladies and gentlemen. We took a bit of time to cover a lot of varying faces from the series which we have seen Metal Sonic take on. Now before we go, I'll easily say my top 3. For spot number 3, Sonic 3 and Knuckles' Mecha Sonic Mk.II. It has to be one of the coolest looking versions of a Metal Sonic and has an awesome boss fight. For spot number 2, Neo Metal Sonic and Metal Overlord, being in my opinion, the most intimidating version of Metal and showing off why he's Eggman's most powerful creation. And lastly, for our number 1 spot, of course, Chaos Sonic. Do I really need to explain why? He has the most charm, and honestly, even if his design's not the best, it has to be one of my favorite versions of Metal. But hey, we all know at the end of the day that nothing beats the original version of Metal Sonic. It's too iconic, and there's a reason why it's such a beloved character that has a lot of fans. But regardless of all the versions of Metal we talked about today, Metal Sonic will always be a welcome addition to any Sonic game he's a part of. And it's always a joy to see him in any title. Hey, and welcome to the end of the video. Socials to my Twitter, Twitch, and Discord will be in the description down below if that interests you. As always, huge thank you to all of my channel members, thank you guys for being awesome, and thank you guys for even giving me a dime. And if you want to have your name be at the end of videos, make sure you hit that join button right next to the subscribe button, which you should also totally press, because guess what, it's free, and if you regret it for any reason whatsoever, you can always come back and unsubscribe later if you want to. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good one.